Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. If you've ever felt rejected, overlooked, or treated like an afterthought by someone you gave your all to, this one's for you. Today we're diving deep into a truth most people don't want to admit. The one thing that breaks them isn't your anger, your sadness, or even your absence. It's the realization that you never needed them to begin with. And once they see that, it shatters everything they built their ego on. Now, before we get started, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you're ready to claim your independence and let the world see your worth. Here's a powerful affirmation I want you to write in the comments right now. I don't need anyone to validate my worth. Drop it below and let it serve as your reminder that you've always been enough. They thought they had you figured out. They saw your kindness as dependency, your love as something they could use to their advantage. They believed that walking away or treating you poorly would break you, that you'd come crawling back desperate for their attention. But they were wrong. What they didn't see coming was this version of you, the one who stands tall, silent, and unapologetic in their absence. The one who doesn't beg for closure or answers, because deep down you've already given those to yourself. Let me ask you something. How many times have you bent over backward to prove your worth to someone who never deserved it? How often have you let their rejection make you question your value, your strength, your identity? They wanted you to believe the lie that without them you were incomplete. But let me tell you something. You don't need them. You never did. They weren't the source of your happiness. They were a distraction from it. Picture this: a bird in a cage, taught to believe it can't fly because it's never been outside those bars. But the truth? The cage was never locked. That bird had the wings to leave all along. That's you. They wanted you to think you were stuck, that they were your only source of validation, your only way forward. But now you see it. The cage was never locked. You're free, and that freedom is what breaks them. Here's the thing about people like this. They thrive on control. They need to feel needed because that's where their power comes from. The second you show them you don't need them, the second you start living your life without their validation, you strip away that power, and that terrifies them. They don't know how to exist without being the center of someone else's world. Your independence is their biggest fear, but let's be real, it's not easy to get here. It's not easy to break the habit of chasing someone who never saw your value. It's not easy to stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start realizing the truth. There was never anything wrong with you. The problem was that they couldn't handle the light you brought to their life, and instead of appreciating it, they tried to dim it. But not anymore. Now you're reclaiming your power, and they can feel it in every quiet moment of your absence. Here's the affirmation I want you to hold on to. I am whole. I am enough. I don't need them. Say it to yourself. Write it in the comments, and let it become the foundation of this new chapter you're stepping into. Because from this moment on, you're not looking back. You're not proving anything to them. You're showing yourself and the world just how powerful you've been all along. Stay tight, because in just a moment, we're diving into the ego they built on your dependence and why your independence is the ultimate blow to their pride. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. Let's go. 1. They built their ego on your need for them. They thought they were the air you breathe, the very thing keeping you alive. But now they're choking on the arrogance of believing you couldn't live without them. Don't lie to me. Don't tell me they haven't treated you like that. Don't tell me they didn't make you feel small, unworthy, or like you were never enough. And don't you dare lie to me by saying you didn't do everything they wanted, everything they demanded, just to keep them close. I know you did. You bent, you gave, you sacrificed because they convinced you that your world would fall apart without them. They convinced you that needing them was a weakness you had to live with. But here's what they didn't see coming. You waking up, realizing that the cage they tried to trap you in was never locked, that every chain they put on you was made of nothing but the lies they told you about yourself. Lies that said you'd never find better. Lies that said they were irreplaceable. Lies that told you your worth came from their approval. Do you know why they do this? Why they mistreat you but still expect you to stay? Because their ego thrives on feeling needed. They need you to need them because it makes them feel powerful. It fills the emptiness they don't want to admit is inside them. But the second you stop playing that game, the second you show them you don't need them, it's over. Their power vanishes, their arrogance crumbles, and their sense of control disappears. Think of them as a tree that thought its shade was the only thing keeping you alive. For years, you stayed beneath it, grateful for the little comfort it gave, even as it blocked the light you deserved. But the moment you stepped away, you saw the truth. The world isn't a desert. The world is endless, full of opportunities and horizons they never wanted you to see. And now they're standing there, their branches empty, their shade unneeded, choking on the realization that they were never your world. They were just a small part of it. But let's not pretend this is easy. Let's not lie about the pain of breaking free from someone who made you believe you couldn't survive without them. It's hard to let go of the version of yourself that needed their approval, that tied your worth to their attention. It's hard to fight the voice in your head that whispers, "What if they're right? What if I'm not enough without them?" That voice isn't yours, it's theirs. It's their insecurity, their fear, their manipulation living in your mind. And now it's time to kick it out. They thought they were irreplaceable. They thought they could treat you however they wanted because you'd always stay, always chase, always prove your love. But they didn't count on this. You seeing through the lies, you stepping out of their shadow, you refusing to be the person they could use to prop up their ego. And that's what breaks them, not your anger, not your absence, your independence, your ability to walk away and not look back. Here's the truth. They needed you far more than you ever needed them. And now they feel the loss of your energy, your attention, your presence. They're scrambling to find someone else to fill that void, but they'll never succeed because the truth is they weren't needed, they were tolerated. And now that you've stepped into your power, they're nothing but a fading memory of a chapter you've already closed. Say this with me: I don't need them. I never did. Write it in the comments, affirm it, show yourself, show them, and show the world that you are no longer the person who bends to their will. You're not chasing anyone. You're rising, growing, thriving without them. And that's the truth they can't handle. And this is just the beginning. Stay tight, because next we're talking about how your independence forces them to confront their own emptiness. And trust me, it's going to shatter them in ways they never saw coming. Let's keep going. 2. Your independence is the greatest threat to their ego. They stood tall, thinking they were untouchable, believing they held all the power. But here's the truth they never saw coming. You were the foundation beneath their feet, and the moment you stepped away, everything they built started to crumble. Your independence isn't just a blow to their ego, it's their greatest fear. Realizing, you see, people who mistreat you thrive on control. They need to feel like you rely on them because it validates their existence. When you depended on them, it wasn't just about what they could offer. It was about the power they felt, knowing you couldn't see a way forward without them. That's what kept them standing, what made them feel superior. But when you broke free, when you stopped looking to them for approval, for answers, for anything, their entire sense of self started to collapse. Don't let them fool you. Don't believe for a second that their ego can handle your independence. It can't. The second you stopped calling, stopped texting, stopped asking for their attention, they felt it, like a void swallowing them whole. They might not show it. They're good at pretending, at wearing that smug smile like your absence doesn't affect them. But deep down, it's eating them alive because what they never prepared for was this. You learning to stand on your own, you realizing you never needed them in the first place. Think of them as a castle built on quicksand. At first, it looks strong, unshakable, a fortress they believe can't be touched. But you were the solid ground holding that castle up, and now that you've walked away, the cracks are starting to show. The walls are leaning, the foundation is slipping, and the more they try to stand tall, the faster they sink. That's what your independence does. It reveals how unstable they were all along. Do you know why they find it so unbearable to see you thriving without them? Because it proves them wrong. It forces them to confront a reality they've avoided their entire lives, that they were never as important as they wanted to believe. Your growth without them, your success, your happiness, it's a mirror they can't escape, reflecting their own insignificance. And trust me, that reflection is the one thing they can't handle. They wanted you to depend on them because it gave them a sense of purpose, of superiority. They wanted to feel like they were the reason you were okay, like you couldn't stand tall without their support. But the truth is, they needed you far more than you ever needed them. And now that you've stepped into your power, they don't know what to do with themselves. They've lost their control, their narrative, and most painfully, their role in your life. But here's the thing, they'll never admit it. They'll never look you in the eye and say, "I hate seeing you happy without me." Instead, they'll pretend they don't care. They'll try to move on quickly, filling the space you left with meaningless distractions. They'll make it seem like your independence doesn't affect them, but don't let that fool you. Every time they see you thriving, every time they hear about your growth, it's like a dagger to their ego. Because deep down, they know they could have been a part of it. They know they had something special, and they destroyed it by underestimating you. But let's not sugarcoat this. It's hard to get here. It's hard to find your independence after being made to feel like you needed them for so long. They conditioned you to believe that they were essential, that your life would fall apart without them. Breaking free from that conditioning takes strength, courage, and resilience. You'll have moments where you question yourself, where you wonder if you're doing the right thing. But every step you take toward independence is a step toward reclaiming your power. Let me ask you this. Do you think they ever really cared about you, or did they care about what you gave them? Did they love you for who you are, or did they love the control they had over you? The answers aren't always easy to face, but once you do, everything becomes clear. Your independence isn't just about moving on. It's about taking back everything they tried to take from you, your confidence, your self-worth, your freedom. Here's your affirmation. My independence is my power. Write it in the comments, say it out loud, and make it your truth. Because the moment you stop relying on them, the moment you realize you're better off without their control, you're not just breaking free, you're breaking them. And this is only the beginning. Stay tight, because next we're diving into why they'll do everything in their power to replace you, and why no one they find will ever come close. Let's keep going. 3. They took you for granted. Now they're the ones left empty. They always say the one who doesn't need you is the one you can't forget. And now they're finding out just how true that is. They took you for granted. Let's not sugarcoat it. They thought you'd always be there waiting, no matter how they treated you. They assumed your patience was endless, your kindness was something they could exploit, and your love was something they'd never have to earn. To them, you were a constant, someone they never had to question. But now they're questioning everything. Think about how they treated you. How many times did they brush you off, ignore your needs, or make you feel like you were an afterthought? They didn't appreciate your value because they thought they'd never lose it. It's human nature to underestimate the things we think are permanent, to treat them as if they'll always be there. But here's the hard truth they're waking up to. Nothing is permanent, especially not the presence of someone who's been mistreated and undervalued. And now they're left empty. They thought you leaving would mean nothing. They assumed they could replace you easily, that someone else could fill the space you left behind. But here's the thing about space. It's not just the size of it that matters, it's the depth. You didn't just occupy a small corner of their life. You filled it in ways they never realized until you were gone. Picture this: a beautiful piece of art hanging on a wall. For years they passed by it without noticing its brilliance, thinking it was just decoration, just another thing they didn't need to pay attention to. But the day it's gone, that empty space on the wall becomes unbearable. It's all they can see. That's you. They didn't see your value when you were there, but your absence. That's something they can't unsee. Do you know why they can't forget you? Because they didn't prepare for this. They didn't prepare for you to leave, to grow, to thrive without them. And now they're left with nothing but their own emptiness to confront. Your independence, your ability to move on, forces them to sit with themselves. And trust me, they don't like what they see. Because when you were there, you filled their voids. You gave them attention, validation, love. You were the light in the dark corners they refused to face. But now that light is gone, and all they're left with is their own shadows, they'll try to distract themselves. They'll act like they don't care, like your absence hasn't affected them. They'll post pictures, surround themselves with noise and pretend they're fine. But don't let their facade fool you. Deep down, they're haunted by the realization that they had something extraordinary and let it slip through their fingers. Let me ask you this. How many times did you make sacrifices for them? How often did you put their needs above your own, thinking they'd eventually see your worth? And how many times did they ignore it, dismiss it, or act like it was expected? They didn't realize it then, but every sacrifice you made, every effort you gave, was proof of your value. And now that it's gone, they're starting to see it. But it's too late. Here's the irony. They thought you leaving would mean nothing to them, but it means everything. Your absence speaks louder than your presence ever could. It's a constant reminder of what they lost and what they'll never have again. And the harder they try to replace you, the more they'll realize just how irreplaceable you were. Because your value wasn't just in what you gave to them, it was in who you are, and no one else will ever compare. But let's be honest, it's not easy to walk away from someone who took you for granted. It's not easy to stop giving when all you've ever done is care. You'll question yourself, wonder if leaving was the right choice. But every time you doubt, remember this: their inability to see your worth doesn't diminish it. Your value isn't determined by their blindness. It's determined by the way you rise, the way you reclaim your independence, and the way you force them to face their own emptiness. Here's your affirmation. My value doesn't depend on their ability to see it. Write it in the comments, claim it, and let it remind you that their failure to appreciate you says nothing about your worth and everything about their own emptiness. And this is just the beginning. Stay tight, because next we're going to dive into what happens when your independence shatters their ego completely, why they can't handle losing control, and how you standing strong sends their entire narrative crashing down. Let's keep going. 4. Walking away was the boldest move you made. They thought you'd stay forever, that no matter what they did, you'd always be there, waiting, forgiving, giving them another chance. But when you walked away, you didn't just leave. You slammed the door so hard that the sound still echoes in their mind. Walking away wasn't weakness. It wasn't giving up. It wasn't an act of defeat. Walking away was the boldest, most powerful move you've ever made. You didn't walk away because you stopped caring. You walked away because you started caring about yourself. They thought they had control over you, over the narrative, over how you'd respond. But with that one decisive move, you shattered everything they thought they knew about you. Think about it. How often did they test your boundaries, push you to the edge, believing you'd always forgive them, always come back? They mistook your love for a lack of strength. They thought your loyalty meant they could treat you however they wanted. But loyalty doesn't mean tolerating disrespect. Love doesn't mean staying in places where you're undervalued. And you walking away? That was the ultimate declaration that their control over you was over. Imagine a puppet on a stage, its strings being pulled by someone who believes they're in charge of the whole show. That's how they saw you, a puppet they could manipulate. But when you walked away, you didn't just cut the strings, you burned the stage to the ground. Now they're left with nothing. No control, no power, no way to bring you back into their orbit. And that terrifies them. They'll replay it forever. The moment you left, the way you didn't look back, the silence that followed. They'll lie awake at night, going over every decision, every word, every misstep that led to you walking away. They'll wonder how they lost the one person they thought would always stay. And the truth? The truth will haunt them because they'll realize that losing you wasn't an accident. It was a consequence. Here's the hardest part. They never thought you'd have the strength to do it. They built their confidence on the belief that you needed them, that you couldn't possibly leave because they were too important to your happiness. But walking away proved them wrong. It showed them that their role in your life was never as big as they imagined. You didn't need them to thrive. You didn't need them to be whole. You only needed to realize that for yourself. And now they're left with the weight of their actions, the way they dismissed you, undervalued you, took you for granted. It's all catching up to them, because walking away wasn't just a decision. It was a mirror that forces them to see who they really are without your presence to mask their flaws. And what they see? It's not something they can handle. Here's your affirmation. Walking away was my strength, not my weakness. Write it in the comments, say it out loud, and let it remind you that choosing yourself will always be the boldest, most powerful move you can make. But this story isn't over. Stay tight, because next we'll dive into why your independence doesn't just shatter their ego. It destroys the illusion of control they thought they had over you. Let's keep going. 5. Your growth without them proves they never mattered. They thought they were the center of your world, the one you couldn't thrive without. But like a plant growing toward the sun, you've outgrown the shadow they cast over your life. Your growth without them is the ultimate proof that they never mattered as much as they wanted you to believe. They wanted to be your everything. They wanted you to feel like your happiness, your success, your very identity depended on their presence. But now you're showing them exactly what they underestimated, your ability to rise without them. Think about how far you've come. When they left, or when you finally walked away, they expected you to collapse. They expected you to spiral, to spend your days trying to fill the void they left behind. But instead, you chose something they never saw coming. You chose to grow. You took the energy you once poured into them and used it to build a better life for yourself. And that is what they can't handle. Because every step you take forward without them is a step that reminds them they were never as important as they thought. Picture this: a tree in the middle of an open field, casting its shadow over everything beneath it. For a while, you stayed in that shadow, thinking it was the only place you could grow. But then you realized something. The sun was shining everywhere, not just where they allowed it. So you moved. You stepped out of their shadow and into the light. And now you're thriving in ways they never imagined, while they're left standing in the same spot, watching as you rise higher than ever. Their attempts to replace you, those are nothing more than empty gestures. They'll go looking for someone else to fill the role you played in their life, someone to validate them, to give them the attention they crave. But it won't work. Because here's the thing, you weren't just a role to be replaced. You were irreplaceable. Your energy, your presence, your love, those are things they'll never find again. And deep down, they know it. That's why their distractions will never satisfy them. Every new person, every shallow connection will only serve as a reminder of what they lost. Let me ask you this. How many times did you let them take more than they gave? How often did you shrink yourself to fit into the space they allowed? Those days are over, because now you've grown beyond them. You've built a life that doesn't include them, and in doing so, you've proven the lesson they never wanted to learn, that their absence didn't break you, it freed you. Here's your affirmation. I outgrew their shadow, and now I thrive in my own light. Write it in the comments. Let it serve as your reminder that your growth is the loudest statement you could ever make. And stick around, because next we're uncovering why your silence and independence are haunting them in ways they'll never admit. Let's keep going. 6. They can't stand that you don't miss them. They wanted to be the storm that destroyed you, but instead you became the calm after their chaos, the peace they never thought you'd find without them. They can't stand it, can they? They can't stand that you're not drowning in grief, that you're not lost without them. In their mind, you were supposed to fall apart the moment they left. You were supposed to pine for them, to wallow in regret, to spend your days missing the person who treated you like an option. But instead, you've thrived, and that's the one thing they never prepared for. You see, they expected to be unforgettable, not because they brought value to your life, but because they thought they'd left such a deep wound that you'd never heal. They wanted to be the storm that wrecked you, the chaos that left you broken, but now they're watching as you rebuild, stronger, better, and more resilient than ever. And every step you take forward is a reminder of just how wrong they were. Imagine this. A wildfire sweeping through a forest, leaving nothing but ashes in its wake. That's how they saw themselves in your life. Destructive, defining, unforgettable. But here's what they didn't understand. After the fire comes regrowth. The trees come back taller, the roots deeper, the forest more alive than it ever was before. That's you. They thought they'd left you in ruins, but your silence, your success, and your growth are showing them something they can't ignore. You never needed their chaos to thrive. Your silence haunts them every day. They don't hear from you. Every moment they don't see you breaking is a moment that forces them to confront their own irrelevance. They'll pretend they're fine, that they don't notice. But deep down, it eats away at them because your silence says what words never could. You're better off without them. And the fact that you're not grieving them the way they expected, that's what breaks them the most. They'll try to replace you. They'll try to fill the space you left behind with distractions, with noise, with anyone or anything that might take their mind off the void your absence has created. But nothing works. Because what they've lost isn't just a person. It's the chance to matter in your life. And every time they see you smiling, growing and thriving, it's like a dagger to their ego, a reminder of everything they threw away. But let's be honest, it wasn't easy to get here. It wasn't easy to move on from someone who wanted you to believe they were the most important thing in your life. You had to fight through the doubt, the pain, the whispers in your mind that said maybe they were right. But every day you chose yourself. Every day you took a step forward, you proved them wrong. And now your life is the ultimate proof that you didn't need them to find happiness. Here's your affirmation. I thrive in their absence. Write it in the comments, claim it, and let it remind you that their chaos didn't define you. The calm you found after they left did, and this is only the beginning. Stay tight, because next we'll explore why they'll never forget the day you chose yourself and how that decision changed everything. Let's keep going. 7. Why they'll regret letting you go. They thought they broke you, but all they did was make you stronger. And now their regret will grow with every moment they see you thriving. They'll regret it, maybe not immediately, maybe not tomorrow, but one day, when they least expect it, the weight of their mistake will hit them like a storm they can't outrun. Because here's the truth. People who mistreat others often don't realize what they had until it's gone. They were so wrapped up in their own insecurities, so focused on controlling you, that they never stopped to consider the value of the person standing right in front of them. Do you know what's ironic? They thought letting you go would set them free. They thought it was their choice, their power move. But the reality is, by pushing you away, they made the biggest mistake of their lives. Why? Because they underestimated you. They saw your kindness, your love, your patience, and mistook it for weakness. They thought you needed them. They believed they were the center of your world, and that without them, you'd fall apart. But instead of breaking, you did something they never saw coming. You rose, you rebuilt, and now your strength is the loudest reminder of how wrong they were. Let me ask you this. Do you think they ever really saw you? Or were they too blinded by their own insecurities to notice the value you brought into their life? That's the thing about people who push others away. They're not rejecting you. They're rejecting the parts of themselves they see reflected in you. Their actions were never about your worth. They were about their fear. Fear of not being good enough. Fear of losing control. Fear of someone seeing the cracks in the image they try so hard to maintain. And now they can't escape it. Because as you thrive, as you grow, as you build a life that no longer includes them, they're forced to confront the truth. You were never the problem. They'll look at your strength, your success, your happiness, and feel the sting of regret. Not because they care about you in the way you deserved, but because they'll realize you were the one who got away, the one they could have built with, grown with, thrived alongside. But instead, they let their insecurities drive you away. Picture this. A child playing with a priceless vase. They don't understand its value, so they toss it around, careless, reckless. And then one day, it shatters. Only then do they realize what they had in their hands. That's them. They didn't see your value when they had it, but now that you've stepped away, it's all they can think about. Every move you make, every step you take forward is a reminder of the treasure they lost. Here's your affirmation. Their regret doesn't define my worth. My strength does. Write it in the comments, claim it, and let it guide you as you continue to thrive. Because here's the truth. Their regret isn't your concern. It's their burden to carry, not yours. What matters is that you're rising, you're building, and you're showing them and the world that all they did was make you stronger. Stay tuned, because next we're diving into the ultimate blow to their ego, how your independence and success proved to them and to yourself that you never needed them in the first place. Let's keep going. 8. You never needed them, and now they know it. They wanted to be the hero in your story, or at the very least, the villain you couldn't escape. But here's the truth they're struggling to accept. Your story doesn't include them anymore, and that's what breaks them. Your silence, your independence, your growth, it shattered the illusion they built their ego on for so long. They thought they were the main character in your life. They believed you needed them to feel complete, to feel whole. They wanted to be the center of your world, the one you couldn't live without. But now they see it. You didn't need them then, and you certainly don't need them now. Let me ask you something. How often did they make you feel like you had to prove yourself to them? How many times did they make you feel small, insignificant, like you had to fight for their attention or approval? They thrived on that dynamic, on the idea that you needed them to feel validated. It gave them a sense of power, a sense of control. But the moment you stopped trying, the moment you let them go, their entire narrative came crashing down. Imagine a book with an unfinished chapter, a story where the villain thinks they've won, only to realize the protagonist doesn't even care enough to finish the fight. That's what your silence is. It's not just a pause, it's the end of their role in your life. You've closed the chapter they were in, and now you're writing a new one that's brighter, better, and completely free of their influence. They thought they'd leave a permanent mark on you, that you'd carry their memory like a scar. But instead, you've turned the page. And here's the part they can't stand. The story you're writing now is a story of strength, resilience, and growth. It's a story where they're no longer needed, no longer relevant, no longer a character at all. Do you know why this breaks them? Because they built their ego on the belief that they meant more to you than they ever really did. They wanted to see you crumble without them, to watch you chase them, to feel like they were irreplaceable. But now, as they watch you thrive, as they see you standing tall, they're left with one unbearable truth. They didn't matter as much as they thought they did. Your independence, your silence, your ability to move forward without them, it's the ultimate rejection. It's not just saying, "I'm fine without you." It's showing them with every action, every success, every moment of peace that they were never essential to your happiness. They were a lesson, a temporary part of your journey, and nothing more. Here's your affirmation: I never needed them, and I never will. Write it in the comments, say it to yourself, and let it be your truth. Because this is your story, and you're the only one who decides how it's written. And trust me, this is far from over. Stay tight, because next we'll uncover why their attempts to replace you will only remind them of just how irreplaceable you truly are. Let's keep going. 9. Action. Step. Prove to yourself that you were always enough. They thought they defined your worth, that their approval made you whole, that their absence would leave you lost. But look at you now. You're still standing, still rising, still proving every single day that you were always enough. Here's the truth. You never needed them. Not their validation, not their attention, not their approval. Everything they thought they gave you, you already had within yourself. They just blinded you to it. But now you see it clearly. You are the source of your own strength, your own happiness, and your own power. And the life you're building step by step is proof of that. Every time you choose to focus on yourself, every moment you invest in your growth, every step you take toward becoming the best version of you, you're not just showing them what they lost, you're showing yourself what you've gained: freedom, confidence, clarity, and most importantly, the realization that your worth was never tied to how they treated you. It was always yours. Let's be honest, breaking free wasn't easy. It took courage to step away, to silence the doubts, to let go of someone who convinced you that you weren't enough without them. But you did it. And now you're not just surviving, you're thriving. They wanted to make you feel small, but all they did was ignite a fire in you that burns brighter than anything they could have imagined. So here's your action step. Prove to yourself every single day that you were always enough. Keep building the life they thought you couldn't have without them. Keep chasing your goals, your dreams, your peace. And let every step forward be a reminder that you don't need anyone to validate who you are. You're already more than enough. Now it's your turn. Hit like, subscribe, and drop this affirmation in the comments. I am ready now. Let the world know your power, your worth, and your strength were never tied to them. See you in the next one.